Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the 10.5 support tier list. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Come by, check out the stream sometime. It starts around 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We usually go till about 2:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's only on YouTube. So come by, check it out. Very friendly, chill community. I try to explain as much as I can about what's going on in the game, different decisions that I could make, that allies and enemies could make as well. And I try to be as conversational as possible with the chat, answering any questions that you have, sharing some fun stories with people sometimes. So come by, check it out. It's a good time. And if you like tier lists like this, I have other content that's similar on the channel as well. So I'm going to do an 80 carry support tier list, and I do an all role support tier list as well, where I just kind of quickly go over the top 5 for each role. So that'll be coming out over the next couple of days. And then we have a coaching playlist if you want to watch some in-depth content about a specific champion that you're interested in. We also have champion guides and topical guides like best one tricks, how to micro better, how to macro better, all that kind of stuff. So tons and tons of content, thousands of videos on the channel. So check it out, browse if you like it. If you like the content in this video, you'll probably find some similar stuff there. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. And as always, I will have timestamps in the description so you can jump around to your favorite parts. And usually you can click on that cog on YouTube and watch this at about 1.5x speed, and you'll probably be able to get most of what's going on and cut the video time in about half or so. So that is an option. And if you like this Google Doc here, I'll have this linked in the description as well if you want a quick little cheat sheet. It also, when you click on the little mini Google Doc for each one, it'll tell you recommended runes, recommended items, and just kind of a rating system, 1 to 5. 1 being the champion is one of the strongest at that task, and then 1 being the champion is one of the worst at that task, and 5 being the champion is one of the best at the task. So lane pressure, how likely can they get priority? How likely is it they can cause a kill, especially during the laning phase? How safe are they, particularly from ganks? How well do they scale over time? And how reliable is the champion in terms of how well can you... how likely is it that someone can play the champion with a moderate amount of practice at a competent level? And then also, how does the champion fit into the meta overall? Are there a lot of counter picks? That type of thing. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. So Rakan, still number 1 to the surprise of nobody who's watched this channel. I still think that he's going to be the best all-around support out there. Definitely for kind of mid and like getting into top tier elo, I think. But I believe even at lower elo brackets, he's still going to be pretty good. The thing about Rakan is he's just so versatile, and that's what I just say over and over again whenever anyone asks me, why do I think Rakan is so strong right now? It's just that he can respond to so many different situations so effectively, because he is one of the premier engaged champions in the game, like a Leona, like a Nautilus. But not only can he go in with his W, he can also get out with his shield. So if your team isn't on board with you, if they don't follow up on your engage, you can usually get back out with minimal losses, just losing your cooldowns basically. Whereas if you go in with Nautilus or Leona or Alistar or some of these other hard engaged champs, and your team doesn't follow up, you're probably going to die. Or if it was just a bad engage in general, maybe you didn't account for the jungler potentially hiding in a bush, or you didn't look at your minimap and one of your teammates is not there, and it's like, oops, I started a 4v5. Those situations are a lot less bad with Rakan, so he kind of mitigate some of those potential errors that you might make yourself when you're trying to create that engagement. It happens to everybody, but he's kind of got that safety valve there just for that. And he also scales with plus healing and shielding items, which is huge. I talk about this in several itemization videos on the channel, so look at that. But healing and shielding, particularly shielding, is one of the strongest sort of abilities in the whole game because of the way that it scales with armor. So if you kind of the TLDR of it is shields work with armor. So if you give somebody a 100 shield and they have 100 armor, then it's going to take 200 damage to break that shield. So that means that the more armor your teammates have and the more magic resist your teammates have, the more effective shields become on them. So when you're seeing stuff like Ornn running around, Zac running around, and more tanks kind of coming into the meta, that makes shielding champions like Rakan, like Janna, Lulu, all those champs even stronger. Also, there are very few abilities in the game that break shields. There are some, right? Like Blitzcrank has one on his ult, but there aren't that many. And shields aren't affected by grievous wounds. So that cuts healing by 40% with like an Executioner's Calling or a Morello or whatever, but it's not going to reduce shielding from Rakan and some of these other shielders out there. So it's just really, really strong. And then not only does it scale with armor and magic resist, but often it has double or sometimes even triple scaling as well, because almost all shields are going to have some kind of AP ratio to them. So it scales with that. And it also scales with the plus healing and shielding stat, which is unique to plus healing and shielding. So, you know, once you get something that's like a a 200 shield, it doesn't look like it's that much. But if someone has 100 armor, you give them a 200 shield. Let's say you have 20% plus healing and shielding, right? That's going to take it up to a 250 shield. Or actually, if you have, I don't know, let's say it has a 0.5 AP ratio on it, you have 100 ability power, right? That's going to take it up to a 250 shield. And then you have the plus 20% healing and shielding. That's going to take it from 250 up to 300. And then they have the 100 armor, so that's going to double the effectiveness of the shield against physical resists. For all practical purposes. So it's going to take 600 damage to break that shield that initially just looked like it was a little 200 shield. And that doesn't even include other things that could affect that, like Revitalize. If you have Revitalize, it's even bigger. So that's why some of these champions start to get out of control and become almost impossible to beat later on in the game, like your Jannas, your Rakans, Yuumi, stuff like that has this plus healing and shielding because it scales so insanely well with all of the different modifiers that go into it. So Rakan actually does have one of the best shields in the game. People don't think of him in terms of that, but he does. I mean, because he can do this twice. That's a 280 shield with a 1.6 AP ratio. So that means it has 280 base. If you have 100 ability power, that means it's getting 160 extra. So that means it's a 540 shield. And then if they have, 100 armor, that's over 1,000. And then if you have plus healing and shielding, it just goes up from there. So he actually has an extremely strong shield. And it's on a 12-second cooldown, which is a little bit longer than some of the other ones out there. But it's very powerful. And you basically get 2 free dashes. So he has 2 dashes on his battle dance, and he has another dash on his grand entrance, and he has a lot of mobility off of his quickness. So there's just a lot of stuff about him that makes him pretty unique. He has the mobility, but he also has really high scaling with plus healing and shielding, even though people don't usually think of him in terms of that. His itemization is also really good. So he can itemize sort of like a primary engaged tank. He doesn't, he's not the tankiest champion in the world, but he basically gets free health when he comes in off of this shield. And he has the mobility to make up for his lack of tankiness. So oftentimes you can avoid a lot of damage. Like I described a second ago, you can go in, get your engage, R, W in, and then you can E back out before you get hit by all of the AoE and just random crap that people throw around in team fights. Right, so that your ability to reposition kind of makes up for the fact that you're squishier in a lot of circumstances. And you can itemize some defensive stuff. I mean, Zeke's is very common on him. It gives a little bit of extra damage to your AD carry. Gives you a nice little assortment of resistances. I think it's 60 armor, 30 magic resist, which is good. And then you apply that slow to them as well, which is going to make it a lot harder for them to run away. And it's going to make it easier for you and your allies to kite some melee champs out there. So he has that. He can even get something like Knight's Vow if they have a ton of AD. If they're just like an all AD comp, he can get Frozen Heart. If your AD carry is not doing very well, but you have like a Darius or a Set that's doing really well, you can get Shirelias very comfortably. Because once again, you're not missing out because you don't have those resistances. Because you're so mobile, you can get away with going squishier stuff for an engaged champ. Versus if you get a Shirelias as a Nautilus or a Leona, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Hi, Roy. Oh, thank you. That's really good. You going to go make some more food in the kitchen? That's good, Rory. Does Sadie want some? No, Sadie doesn't want any. I think she already ate earlier. Yeah. That's more for you, though, isn't it? I'm watching Rory today. This is the only time in the afternoon I would have to do this, so we're going to try to crank this out really quickly. So sorry if there's going to be a couple of periodic interruptions. But anyway, so he can comfortably get Shirelias and operate as an engaged tank. A lot of other engaged tanks can't do that without sacrificing too much survivability, so that's really good. Allows you to play around some of those meatball champs that have a hard time sticking to people, like the Darius, like the Sets. So that's going to be really solid. He can go Redemption for a team fight build. If your team has like a Jarvan, a Rumble, stuff like that, and you're trying to go for team fights, Redemption can be really solid. And if your AD carry is doing super well, you can double down on the double on-hit build, right? You can go Zeke's plus Ardent Sensor if that Vayne is 5-0 coming out of the laning phase, which she never is if she's on your team. But if somehow she is, then you can double down on that and really buff her up as well. So he's just really flexible in his positioning and his playstyle and his itemization. There's a lot of different things you can do with Rakan, so that's what, in my mind, makes him number one. Now, is he going to be the absolute best at one specific task? Probably not. You could argue he's one of the best engaged champs in the game, and Leona and Nautilus do that really well too, but it's just that flexibility that he brings to the table, I think, that makes him really good, because you don't know what you're going to get in solo queue. Is your AD carry going to go off? Are they going to feed? Is your Darius going to go off? Is he going to feed? There's just so many different ways you can play around it He can play the team fights like we talked about before. He can play split pick because he's so good at rotating. And just locking people down. So he can do a whole bunch of different styles and potentially win. Now, the mobility boot nerf is probably the biggest thing that's going to affect supports. Be sure to check out my patch notes video. I'm going to release that as well, probably about the same time as this. A lot of this doesn't directly affect supports. It will affect the meta a little bit. Like I talk about in that video, the boots of mobility is one of the big ones. But Rakan can get a defensive boot a lot of the time because he gets a lot of extra movement speed in fights anyways off of his R. And he does like to be able to move around in combat quickly so that he can tag more people, get more CC, reposition. So, you know, he does often get boots of mobility, but he's not as dependent on that as something like a Thresh or a Blitzcrank, who's really kind of all in on hitting specific hooks and just starting the fight. And then once the fight started, you know, they don't need to move around as much. So he can comfortably get something like Ninja Tabby or Mercury Treads if he wants to do that. Now, Boots of Swiftness are buffed. I still probably wouldn't get those. I don't think they're as cost efficient. They're kind of teasing you with it. I don't know. I might try it out, but I think half the time I find myself getting Ninja Tabby and Mercs anyways, because that allows you to go for a squishier item. So if they have a lot of AD and you get Ninja Tabby, that might free you up to be able to get Shirelia's instead of Knight's Vow, for example. Or it might allow you to take a second AP rune to apply more pressure in the laning phase, but then you get that missing armor that you could have had in your rune. So I think it'd probably just go for a defensive boot there, but it could matter. Anyways, and the rest of his build is, like I said, it's kind of versatile. It's either Zeke's or Frozen Heart, Shirelia's, Ardent Sensor, Redemption. It's just all very situational. But yeah, I think Rakan's still going to be crazy right now if you're good on him. If it's first time you're playing him, could be a little rough, but I think even with a moderate amount of practice, he can become good. Isn't that right, Rory? Yeah, Sadie's running around. Be careful on that chair, okay? It moves. You don't want to fall down, okay?
She just said not to me.
Oh, she's saying hi. Look, she's tired. She's a little shy right now. Okay. So I think Nami's going to be the next one that's going to be really strong, and statistically, she's one of the strongest ones right now. She actually literally is the strongest one statistically by like 0.5%. And what has made Nami strong, if you've been kind of out of the game for a couple of patches or you haven't really paid attention that much, is that a lot of her competition got nerfed out, like Sona and Soraka, so that has allowed some other champs like Janna and Nami to kind of solidify their hold near the top of the list. And then she just applies a lot of really good pressure in the laning phase too. You know, her wave is just point click, it's gonna work, it's gonna do damage, and it heals you on the same motion. A lot of other champs require you to hit some kind of skill shot in order to poke people. And she scales pretty well late game. She's got very good peel with her bubble and with her ult. She doesn't get shut down as hard by Grievous wounds. What is it, Rory?
She wanted to do my bed.
Oh, that's where Sadie sleeps, isn't it? Yeah, that's where Sadie sleeps. So she's got really good peel against a lot of kind of the meatball champs trying to run at you. She does apply a nice slow with her E. So like I said, she's not as shut down by Grievous wounds as some other champs out there because a lot of her power is just the raw CC that she brings to the table. She has really good ranges too. That's something that a lot of people don't think about so much. Oh, you're petting Sadie. Watch your head when you get up. So I think that's going to make her really strong compared to some of the other champs out there. So she's not the highest scaling support under ideal circumstances. Her heal is not like that big compared to something like Yuumi or certainly Soraka. But it does bounce around. It does add a lot of movement. It adds a lot of slow. So she just kind of controls the tempo of fights by slowing enemies down, speeding allies up, just being kind of a disruptive pest. And a lot of her stuff is AoE. Her wave, of course, can hit multiple targets. And then her bubble can hit multiple targets. So she just has a lot of good synergy with a lot of champs. Oh, and what I was going to say before I stopped Rory from hitting her head there. What is it, Rory? What is it? Her range. That's what I was going to say. She has really nice range. So you can like cast your wave on somebody from 725 and it can bounce and go 725 to somebody else. So that means that and I think her E is like 800 or 900 range, the slow that she can put on people. And obviously her ult's like 2000 range. It's really, really far. So that means that she can stand really far back in team fights. She doesn't have to get as close to a lot of the action. So that means that if the team fight goes south or there's an assassin running around, you're more likely to be able to get away from him. Janna is similar, which is why she's up there. Her shield range is 800 versus some of the champs that have to get closer, like Lulu's only 650 range on her shield. And then you have things like Sona, who needs to be really close and touching people with her auras a lot of times. So she has to kind of get within 450. I think that Soraka is also, like 500, 450, or 500 range for her heal. So all those champs, most of them have to get closer than Nami to be effective in combat. So the fact that she can stand so far back makes it more difficult for the enemy to focus her out, and it makes it less likely that she's going to get hit by just random AoE stuff that people are throwing into team fights. So I think that positions her really well overall. In the meta, so you just want to go probably Athene's and then kind of feel it out from there. You can go Shirelia's or you can go Ardent Censer if your AD carry is doing very well. But yeah, I think she's going to be really solid right now. And especially with how much lane pressure is going to matter because plates are going to fall a lot easier. Yes, she is ranged and she is going to get reduced damage versus plates, but they are reducing the overall armor and magic resistive plates too on this patch, and they're worth a lot more gold. So any champion that can really pressure plates and take them early is going to have a huge advantage now in the laning phase. So I think we're going to see a lot more lane dominant champions in the bottom lane. I mean, we've already seen a lot of them, but it's going to double down on those champs that can do that. So I think that's going to make her very strong. She's obviously very good with things like Senna, like Caitlyn, a lot of these like long range poke champs. Okay. And now the next one up here, I know this is going to trigger Jolty probably, but I just think it's true. And a lot of people, I was kind of a little late to the party on this maybe, but I do think that there have been some structural changes over the last couple of patches that make Yuumi, who's probably going to be the thumbnail of this video, a lot stronger than she has been in the past. And she's deceptively strong because her stats really aren't that impressive, and so she can kind of slip under the radar. She's got like a 48 or a 49% win rate, but you have to keep in mind the trajectory of Yuumi. I don't know how long this is going to show her her trajectory here. But as you can see, even in like silver, she's moving up a little bit. I don't know. It's not going to give me too much historical data here. But Yuumi, for a lot of last year, even just think about when she was permabanned all the time, when she was like super OP, and she had like a 100% ban rate in pro play, she never, I don't think she ever got above a 40% win, or like a 45% win rate. It was very close. Maybe she got between 45 and 50, but she never had a positive win rate, like ever. I think this is, and I don't have the exact graphs to look at this, but I think this is her highest win rate in solo queue of all time. I could look at, actually, let me just look at Liga graphs just to verify that. Good job. Yeah. So I think she came out in June of last year. Look at this. Look at this win rate. Now, a lot of people would have you believe that Yuumi is total trash, right? But if you look at this, historically, how she's done, I think she was released in June. If you look at historically how she's done, okay, so at kind of her zenith, at her heyday before she got buffed, she was around like 47% win rate. And this is literally the highest. And so what happened there? How did she go from like a 38% rate in December all the way up to her highest win rate ever right now in solo queue, 48, 49% win rate. And she didn't even have that high of a win rate in pro. I'm thinking, yeah, it's green, isn't it? Yeah, that's a graph, isn't it, Rory? No, Rory, don't lick the brush, please. She's trying to lick this brush after she sweeps the floor. I know it has some extra spice on it, but let's not lick that. Okay, we might have to pull out an emergency Sesame Street Elmo song here in a second to keep her occupied. We'll see. I'll just go ahead and do it just so I can finish this up, because I do have to go do something else here in a little bit. All right, Rory, you want some Sesame Street?
No.
You want a song?
No, I want Daniel Tiger.
You want Daniel Tiger?
Watching this.
Okay. All right, give me just 30 seconds. I'm going to put Daniel Tiger on the phone. Sorry. 1 second. Okay, you want Daniel Tiger? There it is. Go get it. It's the first time she's ever turned down Sesame Street. Okay, anyway, she just hears me talking in here, and then she wants to come in and hang out, obviously. We've been hanging out all day, though, so I was just like, just give Daddy, like, 45 minutes here. Anyways, so despite the fact that, everyone dumpsters her, like, oh, she's trash right now, and she feels really bad, and I was kind of that way, too, for a few patches, I was just kind of caught in the mindset she's a terrible solo queue champion. But the fact of the matter is, her popularity is going up, a lot. She's like 12% play rate now, or she was 3%. And her win rate has gone up like 10% over time. And so that's a lot of new people playing Yuumi that haven't played her in the past. And usually when popularity rises like that, then win rate's going to go down because it's not just one tricks anymore. It's a bunch of amateurs trying to play her and learn her, right? And you would think that that would make her win rate go down. But when you see popularity go up and win rate go up this much in such a short period of time, there's something going on. So you need to investigate that. So I did investigate that a little bit, and I have played against her, and I can confirm that she feels really strong when people are like good on her. And I am going to have a new Yuumi guide coming up. I think it was sponsored by Black Falcon, probably over the next couple of days. So stay tuned for that. I'll give you, a more in-depth rundown. But for now, I'll just explain kind of what I think is going on here and why I think she's strong. First of all, it's not just Yuumi herself. It's the meta that's evolving. It's the meta that's changing with her. So tanks are starting to come back. She is phenomenal with tanks because not only does she kind of buff them up with plus healing and shielding, like I just explained a second ago, why healing and shielding is so good with champs that get a lot of armor and magic resist, but she gives them a lot of movement speed. They changed her movement speed around to be a flat 3-second long buff, which gets really huge once you get a decent amount of AP. They've nerfed out her competition, so they just nerfed Soraka extremely hard a couple of patches ago. They nerfed Sona a lot. Now, Sona did get buffed again on this patch. We'll talk about her here in a second. But that bodes very, very well for Yuumi, having those tanks in there where she really thrives. And tanks, not only does she keep them alive, but because she keeps them alive, she keeps herself alive. So whenever, she's able to stay on a tank, it's just almost impossible to kill him. Like a Yuumi on an Ornn is like the most terrifying thing in a team fight because it's just impossible to kill him. Or a Malachi or a Zac or whatever. She's just very, very good on those types of champs. And they have changed around some of the stuff to make her scale potentially even better than she scaled before. So one of the big changes they did to her is they gave her zoomies and bonus attack speed, so up to 45% bonus attack speed. This is about the same as a Lulu buff. Now, it doesn't have, and Lulu has been one of the strongest, I guess, 80 carry assist type of champs that's out there. Now, 45%, for those of y'all that may not know this, attack speed is worth 25 gold per point of attack speed. So that's 1,000 gold. So it seems pretty innocuous. A lot of people aren't talking about that, how much extra attack speed she hands out to people, but 45% is giving them like 3, almost 4 kills worth of gold on somebody. And when you're also getting something like Ardent Sensor, which further increases attack speed, and adds that extra on-hit element, then that really starts stacking multiplicatively to add up to a lot of damage. Another change, so this is also another change they made to her. It used to be a movement speed that decayed over time. Now it's just a flat movement speed for 3 seconds that does not decay. It ends up being a lot. So once you get to 100 AP, it's a 25% movement speed buff for 3 seconds on both you and your allies. So that is huge. That's a lot of extra movement speed. And think about putting that on someone like a Darius or someone like a Set, those types of champions. It's almost impossible to get away from her. So that's really good. And then this right here, this is something I had to look up, which I totally forgot they did this. Until you start to dig into these patch notes and see, well, what's going on here? What changed to make her a lot stronger? Well, one of the big things that kind of snuck in here, because everyone's just talking about a lot of the nerfs to her Q. That was the big one. And then, the fact that she can get CC'd and she's not going to be able to reattach. She doesn't need to reattach later on. She can just sit on a tank and just fly around to different people. But this one changed to where it increases her allies' adaptive force by the allies scaling, not by her. So previously it had scaled off of her own adaptive force, but now it scales off of the allies' adaptive force. So what does that mean? That means you don't have to get a ton of gold and buy Ludens and get a bunch of AP to be effective with her anymore. She's effective even with low AP items if you want to get something like an Ardent Sensor or Redemption. And that makes her far, far more powerful because those items are way cheaper and they have other utility to them. So right here when this says 12% adaptive force, because you're only going to have 1 point in W in most games, and that's 12% of whatever the ally has as adaptive force. So that means if you put this on somebody who already has a death cap, in the mid game, you get this on your Diana with death cap and she has 300 ability power. Even if you only have 100 ability power, it's going to scale off of her. It's 12% of her ability power. Or if you have a Jhin who has 200 AD, it's the Jhin's AD that scales. So it's no longer Yuumi, It's the person that she's anchored to gets that scaling, and Yuumi gets that scaling as well. So you're basically giving whoever you attach to 12% adaptive force and a flat 12. So they get 12 early, and then they also get that scaling early as well. So that makes it a lot easier for her to scale, even if she's behind or even if she wants to go for a more utility build. They also have buffed up fairly recently. They gave her several buffs, so now she gets a pretty big amount of mana restore. So the 50 mana restore, they had taken that off, they gave it back. So your mana stuff is very expensive early on. They did lower the cost to flat 90 mana. It used to go up to like 120, so they lowered the Q by a lot. Her E still costs quite a bit. It goes up to 160, which is a ton. But you do get the extra mana off of these attacks, and frankly, the fights can last quite a while, but you're going to be able to manage with a lot of the different builds out there, especially like with Presence of Mind, which is the most popular Yuumi build. Getting the extra 500 mana can help you pay for those zoomies. And the fact that your W gives all of this without costing any mana, your Q does cost some mana, but it has been reduced a little bit. I think you can manage her mana, especially if you go mana flow band and you're getting mana regen items. She does have pretty good regen overall as well. I think it's like, 11, 10 flat mana regen. So she does get pretty good value out of Fairy Charms. But she's just pretty good at trading, and then she gets a pretty big shield too, right? Like a 60 shield in lane every time she autos. So if you can sneak that auto attack on somebody, even if they hit you back a lot of times, it's just going to be free mana in your pocket and free damage on them. So I think that this makes her really good because she's very difficult to kill, especially if there are a lot of tanks out there. She has decent presence in lane because her Q does like pretty good damage, especially with Aerie if you choose to take Scorch. All those kinds of things. She has an okay laning phase. They have nerfed Leona and Nautilus a lot, so they don't do nearly as much damage as they used to. They've buffed Exhaust, which is very good on Yuumi as well, so that people can't kill the person you're attached to. So there's just kind of been a convergence of a lot of different things that have made her strong over time. And so I think that, like I said, her win rate's not going to be crazy when you just think about it in the abstract. Like, okay, it's 49%, but the fact, you got to put it in that context, right? Whereas when she was at her most broken state, right, when everyone permabanned her in pro and people were even scared of her and banning her in solo queue all the time, she had a lower win rate in solo queue. So, you just got to kind of put some context there. So I'm here to tell you, if you do not shut her down early, she is extremely difficult later on. Now, I haven't tried her out again. I've played against her, and I've actually started banning her some because she's so annoying. I do think it can be risky if your AD carry is not that great and they chain feed early. That can be a problem. But if you can make it through the laning phase, even if your AD carry is bad, you can still attach to the Darius, you can still attach to the Ornn or the Zac or whatever, and still be very effective. Now, another thing specifically on this patch that has made her, or I think that's going to make her better, is this nerf to the Boots of Swiftness, because most people still do not buy boots on her. So this is only a win for her. That means everyone else is paying 100 gold for something that she doesn't have to buy. So this might also encourage people to play things like Nautilus and Leona a little bit less. Now, are they still going to play those champs? Yeah, because that's the common wisdom, is that you have to play Nautilus and Leona or you're trolling in this meta. That's what a lot of people are still going to be thinking. Now, some people are coming off of that a little bit. Like, Thresh is still popular, Nautilus is still popular. But they're falling down in popularity a little bit. You might see some more people going for Nami. She has a great matchup into Nami. Senna, great matchup into Senna, who's very popular right now. I think she probably has a pretty good matchup into Thresh, so we'll see. Blitzcrank, not a good matchup. That's very bad, because if Blitz hooks somebody and kills them, then they're going to kill you too. Now, I think you can pop off. If they hook somebody and you think that person's going to die, you should jump off of them and run away, if you're not going to be able to turn the fight around. But yeah, I just think she has a lot of potential right now. A lot of the meta is shaken up to make her very strong. She is getting picked more in pro. Now, yes, she doesn't have a great win rate in pro right now. She's got 41%. But honestly, most people don't have a great win rate in pro unless your name is Tom, Kench, Braum, or Rakan. Pretty much. Rakan's got 55%, Braum's at like 53%, and then Tom is something. Tom's 53%, and then everything else is pretty bad, right? As far as like supports go. So, anyways, that's my case. I think she's pretty good right now. I might consider trying her out over the next couple of streams. If nothing else, just for science for the guy that I've got coming out. But yeah, you want to go airy now these days. Some people are still trying out Comet. I've looked at a lot of the best one tricks. Almost everybody goes airy. It just gives you extra poke early on, guaranteed poke. And then it scales a lot better with the plus healing and shielding later on into the game. The mana flow band, you have to have this. Helps you out with your mana problems. Transcendence is what most people are going. Gives you some extra CDR, which is going to be really solid. Gathering Storm, I think, is good. Gives you some better scaling at 20 plus minutes. Now, if you are going to be able to hard pressure the lane, oh, I put the wrong thing there. Revitalize. Well, you know what? I think I'm just going to say, that's what a lot of people are doing, so I'll explain those choices here in a second. But, Gathering Storm is going to be better for later, and if you do think you're actually going to be able to do a lot of harassment and run people out of lane, you can take Scorch. Scorch, in my mind, is just very risky. If you don't force the enemy into a bad back or you don't kill them early on, then Scorch ends up being kind of worthless, whereas Gathering Storm is very strong even as the game goes on. So it just depends. If you have like a Draven on your team or a Misfortune and you look them up on Professor and that's their main champ and they're very aggressive and they're a good player, on that champ, then you can probably take Scorch and harass people out, especially if they have a really weak lane like an Ezreal or a Vayne or something. Maybe you can pull that off. But if you're not sure, if your AD carry is autofilled or they're playing Ezreal or Vayne or something else, it's not going to be able to do anything in the laning phase, then maybe consider taking Gathering Storm. Now, the secondaries are where it starts to get a little bit interesting. Presence of Mind, Cut Down is the most common combination. The Presence of Mind change is actually pretty good for her with those mana changes because you end up getting 500 extra mana and you get plus 20% of your total mana on kills and assists. On these really long fights, that's going to be super useful because your heal costs an absurd amount of mana. It's like 160 mana, which is just like ridiculous. But you will run out of mana in really long fights if you don't have that. But Presence does help you get around that, and then Cut Down allows you to do more damage, more harassment in the laning phase, and it allows you to stack up your Athene's healing a lot more later on. So that's the most common combination. If you think fights are going to be a little bit faster or mana's not going to be as much of an issue, then I have seen some people taking Font of Life and Revitalize. Font of Life is going to allow you to apply your Ardent Sensor to multiple targets. If you have a lot of people on your team that benefit from Ardent Sensor, you hit someone on their team with your slow, with your Q, everybody else auto-attacks them, everyone on your team gets Ardent Sensor buff. That's why you do it, because the heal from Font counts as a heal from you onto them, so that triggers the Ardent Sensor if you're not sure how that mechanic works. And then Revitalize just gives you a lot of extra healing, up to 15% extra bonus healing, and we just talked about how strong that can be. And that stacks multiplicatively with other forms of healing. 10% of it does. So that means it's not just the same as like an extra 10% healing. It's like if you had, 100, you're going to do a 100 heal, you have plus 10% plus healing and shielding, and someone is under 40% health and you're getting the extra 10% from Revitalize, it would trigger the plus healing and shielding first, so it would go from 100 to 110, and then it triggers Revitalize to give you 10% of that, so that would be up to 122 or 121, right? You're getting plus 11 instead of plus 10. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but the way that stacks is actually quite strong in large team fights. So you can do that, but I think the Presence of Mind and the mana is probably going to be more important. So as far as items, I recommend no boots. That's what most people do. The extra healing off of Zoomies is really nice. That does allow you to move around the map and rotate a little bit faster, since it's 3% for all ranks. And it's plus 10% for your total AP, which is a lot in terms of scaling. So once you get to 100 AP, then it's going to be 25%. If you get to 200 AP, then it's going to go up to 35%. So she's still going to be a relatively slow champ. It is going to be hard to make roams and rotations on her. You have to be careful, because if you get caught out, you're probably going to die. She also doesn't take flash. I know Jolty, is going to tell everybody they need to take flash on Yuumi, but, nobody does that. One of the really big, strong things about her is that you can take double summoners. So you can take, typically, it's going to be exhaust and heal. You can also take ignite and heal, but you get double combat sums. So that makes it very hard to all-in Yuumi early on as well, because if your AD carry takes something like Barrier, and then you have heal and you have ignite, it's going to be really hard to fight you in the lane because you're going to have a lot of poke, a lot of harassment. You're going to have your big shield you can get early on, and you're going to have your Zoomies heal. So she's actually kind of formidable in a lot of matchups. Now, yes, you're still going to have a hard time probably against like a Leona Draven or something crazy, but in a relatively otherwise even lane between 80 carries, she can put up quite a fight because of those double combat sums. And she really needs that as defense, right? Because you know, she can be vulnerable. She has low resistances. She is squishy. If she pops off and gets caught, it's going to be a problem. So you kind of do need those double combat sums early on to make up for the fact that Yuumi is a little bit weaker in the early game in all-in situations than some of the hard engaged tanks. So you need that ignite. You need the exhaust. You need the heal. You need those things to help balance the field out a little bit so you can scale into late game. Then after that, almost everybody's going to be going for Athenes. This is really her big ticket item because she provides like relatively safe long-range harass with her Q when you're trying to siege or set up for a fight, and that's going to allow you to stack charges on your Athenes. So you have that really huge burst heal. This is what you see on Yuumi whenever she heals somebody for like 1,000. It's because her Athenes is fully stacked, and she has the Zoomies, and she has a lot of plus healing and shielding. So that's just a phenomenal item on her. You definitely want that. And then most of the time, Ardent Sensor, just because the extra AP is good, the movement speed's good, all of that stuff is something that just synergizes so well with her kit that Ardent Sensor is almost always where you want to be. And then after that, it's kind of up to you. Most people do Redemption. You could do Shirelia's. Some people even do a Mikhail's if they have a lot of CC. So all of those are going to be pretty good options on Yuumi. Okay. And we're going to have to move a little bit faster because I got to go meet somebody here at 5 o'clock. So we've probably got about 20 minutes left here. Okay, so Nautilus, everybody's familiar with him. He's still going to be my favorite of kind of the legacy tanks that are still sticking around that have been nerfed a lot but are still pretty good. I like Nautilus because his point-click ultimate just allows him to reliably engage on that back line. It knocks up anybody else that stands between him and that back line. They did nerf Stopwatch last patch, so less and less people are just randomly taking Stopwatch. It's usually only people that are going into Zanya's. These days. He can still get Gargoyle Stoneplate, which is extremely strong on him. His 2,500 gold basically makes him unkillable in team fights. And he does put out a lot of consistent damage with his auto attack roots and then also with his E. He has great wave clear as well, which is something a lot of people don't think about, but you can push and get priority with your E, which is something a lot of other tanks can't do. That's going to allow you to contest dragons, to contest scuttles, to get those first couple of steps so you have a faster rotation. There's a lot of good stuff you can do with wave priority, and Nautilus is going to be one of the best tanks at doing that. And he also has an escape with his hook, so usually you're going to use that to be able to engage on people. But if you're getting ganked and you're a little bit out of position, you're pushed up in the lane, you can actually use that hook to hook a tower, hook a wall, something like that, and get away from ganks. Now, on the flip side of that, you aren't able to hook people over walls. So some of his roaming and some of his gank potential is going to be hampered a little bit, particularly around the top side of the river, or like when you're on the bottom side of the map, the top side of that river near the pixel bush. You can't hook people over that wall. What's too loud? Is Daddy too loud?
It scared me.
It scared you?
It's loud.
What's loud? The fan? Oh, be careful around Sadie.
About this.
What is it?
Food.
Okay, we're gonna go meet Mommy here in just a little bit, okay?
It's too loud there.
What is it? The fan? Is the fan scary? Okay, hold on, I'll turn it on. Okay. There you go. Is that better? Okay, you need a potty? Okay. You need a potty? Okay. Alright, come on. You wanna watch some Sesame Street, Rory? So anyways, yeah, I think Nautilus is still going to be pretty strong. Most people are familiar with him. By this point, he's been in the meta for like 6 months. It's just that's why he's still good, I think. It's because he has the priority. He's a little bit safer than someone like a Leona. He has that guaranteed lockdown engage. They can't flash it. They can flash to make it more difficult for you to capitalize on it, but your thing's going to hit him, right? Your ult's going to hit him unless they have some kind of stasis effect. So I still think that makes him really good. So you could still definitely play Nautilus and do pretty well. In my mind, I think Rakan's a lot better in most circumstances. He's just a little bit more versatile, has better scaling with plus healing and shielding, plays better with other tanks. But I think Nautilus is easier to play. And if you do need that hard front line that can just stay there and just, keep auto attacking and just doesn't have to move around a lot, then he's going to be your man. Okay, Sona, I think. Do you need a potty? Wait, you do need to use it? No. Hold on, Rory. What are you doing? No, you can't sit on it on the floor, Rory. Do you need a potty or not? Okay, come on. Sorry, she's playing with this little toilet that we have in here. What are you doing? Are you just sitting there for fun? Okay, well let me know if you have to potty. Man, she's like throwing it on the floor and then sitting on it. It's this seat that like goes over the toilet that makes it like, that makes the seat kind of smaller. It's hard to describe, but it allows her to sit on a big toilet. But now she's sitting on it on the floor, so I'm hoping she doesn't get confused and just like crap her pants on the floor while she's playing around. I guess we'll find out here in a second. But let's get through this. So Sona, she is getting several buffs back on this patch. They're taking a lot of her stuff out, and the reason they're giving her back these is because they're nerfing Frostfang so that she can't use it in a solo lane. It's not going to affect supports significantly. But yeah, they're giving her quite a few things back. So they're giving her 4 auto attack damage, which is kind of whatever. The big one is the movement speed. This is what shot her win rate up from like 52% to like 55 a couple of patches ago. So her self-movement speed is 20%. This allows her to have better back timings, to rotate around, make plays around the map. Her mana costs were nerfed a few patches ago, but if you're staying close to people, it's not going to hurt as much. It is going to hurt her E cost 90 when you rotate around the map now, so that can have you go pretty quickly. I tried Tear out with her to see if that helps out. I still think that Tear's pretty terrible. A lot of times you still just want to go for the Athene's Ardent Censer. So, you know, it might be a little generous to have her top 5 with this. Maybe it should be Janna. Maybe it should be Blitzcrank. But I think that she is going to be pretty good. She can match up, like, okay with Yuumi. The problem is she can't actually get focused and killed. But she does have a similar ult to Yuumi, so she can impact fights. And I think she's going to overall have better harassment against someone like a Yuumi in the laning phase, just because it's guaranteed. You don't have to aim your Qs. You just automatically hit them. And she still scales extremely well. If you're spamming your E later on, she's going to have shorter cooldowns than Yuumi. So she's going to put out more like sustained healing and shielding in fights than Yuumi is. She's just going to be more vulnerable. But I think that she is someone... Oh, you want to play with the umbrella?
Yeah.
You want to open it in the house? That's bad luck, Rory. Rory says, I don't care. Whoa! You want to play with that? Okay, don't break it, though. Got to be careful, okay? It's open. You can hold on to it. So, yeah, I think she's going to be pretty good. So, still going to be a rough matchup into things like Nautilus, into Leona, so you got to be careful out there. But, you know, into other enchanters like Janna, maybe Yuumi, I think that she could have a pretty good matchup. So, Sona's someone that's worth considering after the buff again. Janna is still going to be really strong. She's good at peeling a lot of tanks. Yeah, good job, Rory. If you have it, she's really reliant on a competent ADC. That's my whole thing with Janna. She does give a lot of AD out. She can give up to 50 AD, and then it has an AP ratio as well once you max your shield out. So that's very good on crit champions because that AD can crit, right? If you have someone that has Infinity Edge, that 50 AD can very quickly turn into something like 100 and whatever, right? 125 AD. Or 125 damage on hit if she crits. So with someone like Jinx especially, who might be coming back to the meta a little bit if she gets a better front line with tanks. Good job, Rory, yeah. Okay, you're ready for the rain, aren't you? That's fun, isn't it, Rory? It's a Rory size umbrella. But she can be really good if it's a crit user like a Jinx, maybe even like a Twitch, someone like a Jhin. It can be strong, but the thing is, like, some of the crit users are sort of falling by the wayside. I think Senna is one of the strongest ones. Miss Fortune is still getting crits, so that can be good. So, she's solid, but if your AD carry flops, you know, if you got an Ezreal bot lane and he goes 0-5, you don't, it's harder to transition. That is fun, isn't it, Rory? It is harder to transition to help other champions, right? Like the Darius, like the Set. You can, but you don't have options to speed them up unless they're running away, unless they're running towards you. So it's a lot harder to play around other champions if your AD carry fails. She does rotate really quickly. Now the nerf to Mobies are... Hey, Rory, slow down. Turn it sideways. Can you turn it sideways and walk through the door? She's going to break the umbrella trying to walk through the door with it. Here. Hold on, wait. Okay, watch. I'll show you. Look. Watch this. See? turn it sideways like this, and then you can walk through the door. See? Oh, there it goes. There you go. Okay, be careful. Okay, you got it.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, she got it.
And
But yeah, so she just doesn't have as many plan B options if your AD carry fails. If you do have another heavy AD user, you've got like a Master Yi or a Kindred or something like that, you know, that can be really good. But once again, you can't help them in combat that much, right? You give them the AD, you give them the shield, that's good. But she's really a lot more of a peeler, so she's going to be way better on a team that has a ranged physical damage dealer that scales super well that you can play off of. An AD carry, right? So like a Jinx type of figure. So she's okay with the dive type of comps. You can get a Shirelia's to help compensate for that a little bit to give you that movement speed. But there are other champs that are going to hand out the movement speed a little bit better. That can help out with that, like Yuumi, like Lulu, like Nami, even like Sona, if she touches multiple people with her E, can help some more of these dive comps. And that's really what's kind of strong right now, especially out of the top laners that are being played. You've got your Ornn, your Darius, your Sets, things like that. You want to have some kind of movement speed. So she does have a really high win rate right now. She is like really good at peeling, but she's not as good at engaging, and she's not as good at playing around if your AD carry is a turkey. But if you have the higher scaling AD carry, if you have the Jinx and they have the Ezreal, Janna can be one of the best options out there because it's very, very difficult to dive through a Janna. So she's good against what's going on in the meta. She's good against Darius. She's good against Set. She's very good against Zac because she can knock him out of the sky with her Q or with her ult. So she's good against dive, but she's not good with dive, if that makes sense. So it kind of puts her in an odd position. So if you have the higher scaling comp, if you're very confident that you just need to stall it out and just shield and protect a reliable AD carry or some other range type of threat, and your team's just going to outscale them, and you're just going to win just with sheer force, then she's going to be good. It's just she's not going to be able to start fights, and she's not going to be able to help other people start fights reliably. So, you know, I've heard her described as a force multiplier before. I think I'm a Cutie Pie called her that, or somebody else. That's kind of what she is. So if you have the higher power level, you know, in your team comp, then she's going to be better. If you have a lower power level, once again, if you have the Ezreal and they have the Jinx or they have the Twitch or something like that, it's going to be a bad pick. So I think that she can be really good, but you need to probably wait until you see a little bit of their comp and try to play her like 4th or 5th pick. Or you need to have very high confidence that your team is going to be really good and you're going to have high scaling. Like everyone's hovering their champs. You do the Professor. Everybody has a good win rate on those champs. Nobody's auto-filled. Then maybe you can do Janna. Okay, last couple of picks here. Blitzcrank is still going to be very good right now, and he's very good against those enchanters, right? I think that he's great against Nami, really good against Yuumi, because if you hook the Yuumi person, you kill the person that Yuumi's attached to, then you're going to be able to kill Yuumi as well. Very good against Tahm Kench as well. Some pro teams are picking that. You don't see Tahm a lot in solo queue, but it's a similar concept to Yuumi. You basically get a 2-for-1 hook if you hook somebody, and you can blow up champions that rely on shield. So like Tahm Kench, when he tries to grayskin with his shield, this is something LS missed. I think it was LS. Someone was talking about a Tahm Kench. Maybe it was I'm a Cutie Pie critiquing a Blitzcrank pick that I watched the other day. But people forget that ult blows up shields, and Tahm Kench, a lot of his survivability is that shield, right, whenever he grayskins. So the fact that you can delete that is really good. That makes him very good against things like a Janna, who throws out a huge shield, and anything else that's going to be very reliant on a massive shield. Makes him pretty good against Set, who's going to have that huge shield. You can blow that up instantly if you hook a Set in. Everyone does a lot of damage. Now, he's still going to be able to do his the damage off a Haymaker, but you're going to make his shield disappear instantly with the ult. So he does have some very good matchups. He can completely decimate if he actually hooks the Sona, the Janna, the Nami, that type of stuff. If you hook a Nautilus or a Leona, now the Nautilus, you're a little bit better because he is going to have a shield that you can blow up with your ult. Leona, a little bit less so. But if you're hooking some of those, like tanky champions, it's not going to be as good later on in the game, especially once they get Gargoyle Stoneplay. But overall, he's still going to be pretty solid. He's very one-dimensional. They did just nerf boots of mobility. You still have to get those. There's no other choice. You're just going to have to eat that extra cost. So that does kind of suck. And he did get a little bit of a nerf on this patch where his armor goes down by 3. So if you are against a heavy poke lane, you're getting pushed in constantly by like Senna, Caitlyn, that type of stuff. It could be kind of rough for him, but he's just a very high-risk, high-reward champion, but the rewards are very high against what I think will be the best supports right now. I mean, statistically, they are, the Nami, Bard, and Janna, even though a lot of people are still playing the tanks. So it just kind of depends on how the meta shifts, but particularly if Yuumi continues to trend upward in popularity and power, then he's still gonna be very good. Okay, Senna's another one that I think is good. I think she's way better as ADC, and I'm not counting it what they call farm share Senna or whatever, where she is the ADC but she doesn't farm stuff, and you have the support take, like buy real items and take the farm bottom lane. I think that's a really toxic thing. I've talked about that in my patch notes video a little bit. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like proper Senna where the AD carry is farming a lot of stuff and you're the Senna and you're not getting a lot of the gold. I think that she's just a bit weaker. She works as AD carry because the items that she gets are cheaper than other AD carries, so she can get Manamune and Dustblade or Manamune and Ghostblade, and that's 2,400 gold and then 3,000 gold, I believe, which is going to be a lot cheaper than trying to go like Infinity Edge for 3,400 or Blather and King for 3,200 as your first item. So that allows her to come online, pressure, gain lane priority, and then go after things like Scuttle and Dragon a lot faster and be more efficient than other AD carries. She also has really high base effectiveness on her spells. So like her Q does a lot of healing and a lot of damage compared to a lot of AD carries out there. It's AoE, it affects multiple people. Her ult's AoE, multiple people. She has good utility with her E so that she can, cause a lot of confusion in team fights and give people extra movement speed. So she's got a lot of really high effectiveness in the early game. And then she scales very well, obviously, in the late game with her souls as well. So I think that makes her very good as AD carry, but it's almost the exact opposite as support, where her items are going to be more expensive than traditional support items. She's usually going to start with Umbral Glaive, which is 2,400 gold, versus a lot of other supports that are starting with things like Athene's, which is very popular, is going to be 2,100 gold. Shirellia is going to be 2,000 gold. Even Ardent Sensor is going to be like 2,300 gold. Zeke's is going to be 2,300 gold. So other supports are going to get ahead of you in terms of the gold race. And then your second item is almost always far more expensive, whether you're getting Dustblade or whether you're getting Edge of Night. That's going to be about 3,000 gold. I think Edge might be slightly cheaper, but either way, it's pushing 3,000 gold on those items versus all of the Primetime Enchanter items are going to be about 2,100 to 2,300 gold. Gargoyle's Stoneplate is 25, but either way, it's a lot cheaper. So unless you're snowballing really hard, then she's going to fall behind. Now, getting those souls does help her out a lot with scaling. Every soul is worth about 50 gold in terms of contributions, because you get 1 AD, and then you're also going to be working towards a crit and be working towards extra range. So Jat did the math on it and figured it's about 50 gold, so I'm going with his calculations there. But, you do get to make up for that a little bit. But I just think that she is kind of vulnerable to some of these all-in champs, and I just feel like a lot of the enchanters like Yuumi are just going to outscale her in team fights. She does have really good poke, but her damage is not going to scale up high enough to make up for the fact that she's going to be losing out by not getting those enchanter items later on. So she can be good. She's great early on. She can be solid later on. She has a pretty good win rate, but I just think that she's far better as AD carry than she is as support right now. Okay, Leona's another one that I think is really good. I think she's a worse version of Nautilus right now. She did get nerfed a pretty decent chunk. She's just a lot riskier. She has no escape button. She doesn't have that hook to escape. She doesn't have the escape that, certainly doesn't have the escape capabilities that Rakan has. So she's very good if you're winning hard. If you're in an all-in lane, you got like a Draven Leona or a Tristana Leona, and you're getting kills, you're snowballing. Because she can engage through minions. That's really one of her big claims to fame, is you don't have to have open fields. You can zone people off and bully them regardless. They can't hide anywhere. So that's really nice. She does have very long engage range too. I think her ult's like 1,100 range and is fairly difficult to dodge. And it's a 90-second cooldown. So that is pretty handy. And she does have some of the best resilience of any of the other tanks out there. She's very difficult to take down in team fights, especially early on, because of the way that Aftershock scales with her W. And the way that scales with Gargoyle Stoneplate. She's almost impossible to kill. And she has really low cooldowns on most of her abilities. You can just keep chain CCing them with your Q, with your E. That makes her really strong. It's just that she's very risky. If you fall behind, you can't really do anything. She has to go all the way in. She goes all the way to the enemy. She doesn't meet them halfway like Nautilus. She doesn't pull them completely out of position like Blitzcrank. So if you're behind, you can potentially get melted. So I think that that's going to be a problem. Now, some people might say, but she's extremely good into She's extremely good into Rakan, though, right? And you have Rakan as the number one person. It's like, well, you would think that, and that's what the common wisdom is. And I'm not saying that my experience is the same as everybody, but I absolutely thrash Leona. I've got a 70% win rate against her as Rakan. And, you know, the big reason for that, and I have a high win rate against Nautilus, too, as Rakan, but specifically with Leona, is that whenever she goes for that all-in, you can shield somebody, protect them most of the time. So she engages on somebody with the ult, you press R, you shield him, so you take away a lot of that initial damage. Now she's CC'd because she had to run all the way in there, and you still have your W available to go CC someone else. So a lot of times you can negate her engage with Rakan by CCing the enemy for about as long as she's going to CC your AD carry, but now you're going to function a lot better once those cooldowns are down because you have those shields, and she's really far out of position, right? So your team's going to get to beat the hell out of her, right? Because she had to go all the way in, but after you W on it, so you shield somebody, you W, you hit their ADC, you can shield and get back out, right? So now you're not out of position anymore, right? They got very limited hits on you, but Leona has to do a little walk of shame after that engage and try to walk all the way out. So she's going to take a bad trade, and she might even die off of that. So it's just the matchup is not as good as people think it is if you're experienced on Rakan a lot of times. So, you know, yes, she can be good into Yuumi and Sona and some of these other things, but she's just a lot riskier. I'd just rather be playing Nautilus or Blitzcrank if you want that type of champion right now, although she can be effective. And then Bard got a huge nerf on this patch. Got, you know, a lot of people are brushing this off. A lot of other content creators like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Just a little, just 3 damage per meep. That's 20% of his damage on his meeps. Like, that's a lot. Just think about it in terms of percentages. That is a lot of damage. That's every 5 meeps, he's losing 3 damage off of that. And that's a lot of why Bard's so powerful, is he deceptively does a ton of damage early on with his Q. He takes Electrocute, he has the meeps. He's a damage-dealing early game champion, who I think kind of falls off later on. I mean, I don't know the exact charts. I could be wrong about that. Yeah, I mean, look at this chart. Bam, off, like, falls off a cliff. Like, extremely good up to 20 minutes. Why is that? Because he does a lot of damage early on with his meeps, with his Electrocute, with his Q. And you're taking away 20% of his damage off of his meeps, which is most of his damage. So now it's just going to be like this just straight hit into the gutter, I think, off of him over the next couple of weeks. So, I don't know. I think he's still okay. I have him at tier 2 out of respect, but I think this is going to affect him a lot more than most people believe. So we'll see how it goes, but I think knocking that much off his damage is actually going to be pretty brutal because he's so reliant on the early game snowball. Okay, and just the last couple of champs here, then I have to get out of here. Lulu, still going to be strong. She still can buff people up. You can pick her with Kog'Maw. You can pick her with some other champs. The problem is, or like maybe a Twitch, the problem is Yuumi's just way better than she is right now. You know, Yuumi does give the movement speed like she does with her Whimsy off of his zoomies. He does give a big heal. I think it's, in many cases, it's similar to her shield. It can get reduced by plus healing and shielding, but it's a similar amount. She also gives the attack speed off of that now. The same attack speed, 45% as Lulu. So she gives the speed, she has the heal, and she has the attack speed, which is everything. It's like basically Lulu's W and her E on one ability. And like her other abilities are actually useful. Like Lulu's Q is pretty much worthless outside of the first few levels in the laning phase. And, you know, that's pretty much it, is Yuumi's just a way better Lulu in a lot of circumstances. Now, Lulu does give picks to people, which does add a lot of extra on-attack damage. But the fact that Yuumi can't be targeted, she has a huge AoE root on people. She has lower cooldowns. She gives extra adaptive force to people. She just does way more. So I just think that right now Yuumi's just a far better version of Lulu. And I think that Sona and Nami are just doing, like, if you want to go for the early game pressure, are just going to be better at that than Lulu is. She doesn't have a heal, so she takes a bad trade in the laning phase. You just kind of have to eat it. It's just really rough. So there are some things, specifically people who get Ginsu's plus Blazer and King, that scale super hard, you know, like Kog'Maw specifically, but also maybe Twitch. He doesn't get Ginsu's, but the Blade plus Hurricane could be pretty good. Although I think Yuumi's almost certainly going to be better on Twitch. I don't know about Kog'Maw, but there might be some places where you can pick her, but overall she's going to be a bit weaker. And then like the AP supports like Brand and Zyra, you can play them, but I think it is pretty rough, especially against champions who have heals, like the Nami, Yuumi, Sona. A lot of the top-end champs can heal through a lot of your early harass if you don't blow them up immediately. And they have a really hard time scaling. I've had someone in my comments be like, I think Brand scales really well and Zyra scales really well. What are you talking about? It's like, well, the thing is their items are expensive. If you have infinite money, yes, they are going to scale really well. If you just, dropped a wheelbarrow of 10,000 gold on everybody in the game, yes, they're going to be really good. But the problem is their items are very expensive, right? Gold matters. The cost of items matters. And when a lot of your items are going to be like 3,000 gold, we're talking 3,100 for Leandries, and then I guess you can get Rylai's at 2,600. If you want Ludens, that's going to be 3,200. All of your items are just so expensive. So when, the enemy support is basically getting a 50% discount on their item compared to you, right? They're getting their Ardent Sensor at 2,100. You're waiting 3,200 for Ludens. That's a big problem because they're going to be able to complete their item like 7 minutes faster than you unless you're just murdering everybody and snowballing. So those champions, the Brand and the Zyra, they can be really good if you're really far ahead and everyone's just like, just dying everywhere and you're getting a ton of money, they can be good. But in a lot of circumstances, they can get outscaled. So they can be good in silver and stuff like that, where there might be a lot more deaths per average on game. But as you start moving up, they get a little bit worse. So it just depends. You can make them work, but I think they're a really risky pick, and I think there are better picks out there right now. Thresh and Pike, if you land the hooks, they're great. If you don't, it can be a little rough. Thresh does have a bit more utility. I just think he gets outscaled by a lot of other champs out there. Anyways, that's going to be it. I got to get out of here, so thank you all very much. As always, I really appreciate it. Be sure to check out the rest of the content on the channel, and I'll see you next time. Have a good day.